Hi guys, please like, share and subscribe. And if you want full course for any actuarial subject, visit theactuarialguy.com or WhatsApp on this number. Thank you. Hello and welcome guys. In this video, we are going to talk about subject CM1. I'll provide you a subject overview and we'll talk about how to crack this exam. So let's dive right into it. So firstly, let's talk about what is it that we'll go over in this video. See, CM1 is one of the most important actuarial subjects. Life insurance employers would not even consider to hire you unless you have passed subject CM1, right? So ideally, this should be your first or second exam that you should be taking. And if you're starting actuarial science in college alongside your undergraduate degree, you should ensure that you pass CM1 uh, alongside your college. So passing as early as possible is a good idea. Also, CM1 forms as the basis for a lot of further exams, including CP1, which is the actuarial practice paper, which is one of the most challenging actuarial science exam. It also forms as the basis for SP2, which is the life insurance specialist principal paper, and SA2, which is the life insurance specialist advanced paper. So this is a very important paper, right? So we'll go into the syllabus objectives and the prerequisites for CM1. What all knowledge do you need in order to study CM1, and what will we broadly study here, right? Then I'll get into description of each individual topic. We'll talk about what is it that we would exactly study in every topic or every unit of CM1, and how much time is it expected to take you. I'll also briefly talk about how is this applied in the real world. Then we'll get into the exam study strategy for IFoA and IA. How do the two differ from each other, right? What is it that you need to do extra for IA? Because typically that is the more difficult exam. And II's CM1 exam, unlike some of the other exams like CM2, CB2, it's a relatively difficult paper. Okay, CB2, CM2 in II of late have been very comparable to IFoA or much easier. But with CM1, expect that it is a more difficult exam as compared to the IFoA exam, thus requires much better first principle understanding of the content and much more practice, right? So we will talk about how do the study strategy differ. Okay, we'll talk about the common mistakes that students make while taking or studying for the CM1 exam. We'll talk about what are the other exams that you can take along with CM1 so that you can plan your exam better or plan your exam progression better. We'll talk about the course that I offer for CM1. It's a very detailed course. I get into the intuition and derivation of every concept, and we practice a lot of exam questions, including paper A as well as Excel. So I'll go over what is included in my course, right? So without further delay, let's dive right into it. Firstly, let's talk about what is the overall syllabus objective and what are the prerequisites that you need. So see, what is it that II or IFoA is aiming to teach you with this exam? So the objective here is to teach you one, that is financial mathematics, okay, which basically means uh, how do you deal with cash flow structures? How do you value cash flow structures? Now, what do I mean by cash flow structures? It can be anything. It can be a business which has inflows and outflows. It can be a loan account where you have taken a loan and you're paying back installments. So how do you value it at different points? How do you get the installment given the loan amount and the interest? How do you get the interest rate if the uh, loan amount and installments are given? How do you get the principal amount if your installments and interest are given, right? So basically calculation of one element when the other two are given, right? It helps you values loans. We get into the valuation of equity, that is stocks, right? Which is shares, right? We get into the valuation of bonds, we get into the valuation of property, right? So whole bunch of valuation of financial instruments is covered here. Some of the advanced financial instruments such as derivative contracts, which you must have heard about, are covered in CM2. So basic financial instruments such as loans, property, bond, etc. are covered under CM1. In terms of life insurance mathematics, we learn about how do you calculate the premium for a life insurance contract, right? And how do you calculate the amount of reserve, that is the money that the company need to set aside in order to pay a claim of a policyholder, right? So you don't need to worry about all of this right now. Some of this might seem complicated to you at the moment, but as we go through the subject, things will start looking much simpler, and it's very intuitive, and CM1 is one of the most interesting actuarial science subjects, right? It lays down the foundation of actuarial science. If someone wants to know if actuarial science is for them or not, they should write CM1, right? Then under paper B, all of these things, financial mathematics concepts, that is valuation of financial instruments, as well as valuation of life insurance contracts, is applied onto Microsoft Excel, because in the real world you will not be doing these things on paper using a pen, right? You will be using doing this on a software, and the most commonly used software in the industry is Microsoft Excel, right? So that is the broad idea of what IFoA and II are trying to teach you here, right? So two things: valuation of financial instrument and valuation of life insurance contracts. Now, what are the prerequisites? These are basically topics which are not covered under the CM1 CMP. I have free videos on YouTube for almost all of these things. At this point, when I'm recording this lecture, I've already created the prerequisites for statistics, and for mathematics, that is your +2 level mathematics, I'll be creating introductory videos soon, so that will also help you. So what are the prerequisites? What are the things that you need to know before you start CM1? Firstly, you need to know descriptive statistics, okay, mean, median, mode, variance, idea of those concepts at least, right? I have a video on descriptive statistics. I'll attach a link in the description. You need to know the theory of random variable. This is talked about extensively in subject CS1, right? I have a video on random variables. You can go through this. Then you need your class 12 level mathematics. This is required for any actuarial exam, right? So you need to know calculus, basically integration, differentiation, application of derivatives, right? Mostly integration is used a lot in CM1, right, for valuation of continuous cash flows and continuous probability structures. Then you need sequence and series, again very important for CM1. You need to know your arithmetic progression, geometric progression, how to get their nth term, how to get their sum, all of that, right? You need to know algebra, which is basically solving basic algebra. Not going to get into a lot of detail of this, just your A level or +2 level algebra. And then you need to know numerical methods, including basics of log, anti-log, all of these things, right? So what is the exponential function? What is the logarithmic function? Base e, base 10, all of these things, right? So if you have not studied +2 level mathematics, I would recommend you go through these topics. You can look them up on my channel if they are available. I plan to put them. I haven't put them yet. Okay. When I put them, I will add a link to the description of this video. Now, okay. Now let's just get into the number of hours it will take for you to cover subject CM1. So IFoA's recommended number of study hours is 200, which is the minimum amount of time you should give. CM1 is a relatively bigger exam as compared to subject CS1, and it's even bigger than CS2 and CM2, right? Also, historically, even in case of II, the CM1 exam is actually relatively quite difficult as compared to the IFoA exam, right? So the difficulty level between the IFoA and the II, that is the Institute of Actuaries of India exam, has been significant in case of CM1. The pass percentages for CM1 are also always under 25% for IA, and we have also seen past percentages which are under 20%, right? So II takes significantly more effort, and you should give about 250 hours if you are writing the II exam. Of course, in one of the later slides, we'll get into how the II preparation differs from the IFoA preparation, right? Now, CM1 is all about practice. So understanding the material itself, or in case you have enrolled for my course, going through the videos would not take you more than 65 to 80 hours, right? So you should only give about a third of the time to understanding the material and uh, you know watching the video lectures and covering the basic practice questions within the material from an understanding point of view. A majority of your time should go into question practice, and when I say question practice, I mean practicing the practice questions from the CMP, revision notes, as well as the past exam papers of II or IFoA based on which institute you are writing, right? So that would take a majority of time, that is anywhere between 80 to 100 hours, right? Now coming to paper B, it is the Excel application of the same concept. So you've already studied the concepts, you don't need that much time, but please give at least 50 to 70 hours because you need to get used to Excel. You need to get used to Excel shortcuts, working with Excel. In case of II, the experience is slightly different because they disable certain keyboard shortcuts. So you should work under circumstances where you don't have these keys available. Particularly, they disable your function keys, they disable your right click, right? So we'll talk about that. I've actually made a separate video on how to deal with the II Excel exam, right? But you should not ignore Excel. Going through Excel portion and solving a good number of questions should take you anywhere between 50 to 70 hours, right? So a robust preparation for CM1 takes about 200 to 250 hours. Now let's just dive into what are the various topics that are covered within CM1 and how much time you should give to each topic from a paper A question practice and paper B perspective, right? So the first unit is related to cash flow discounting. Here we talk about the idea of time value of money. Now, what is the idea of time value of money? Time value of money basically says that your money today is superior to money in the future. So if I give you 1000 rupees or 1000 pounds today versus if I give you the same amount 5 years down the line, you will prefer the money today. Why? Because of a couple of reasons. The first reason is inflation. That is, the things in the economy that you can buy from that money will increase in price, right? So there is a general increase in prices of things in an economy. That's why you prefer money today. Second reason for that is uncertainty. I am promising to pay you 1000 pounds 5 years down the line, but I may not pay, right? So there is uncertainty about it. So for these reasons, money today is superior to money in the future, right? In this unit, we learn to measure how much exactly is money today superior to money in the future, and that is driven by the idea of interest rates, right? Then we get into real and money interest rate, which is all about how do you look at this interest rate with and without inflation, right? So what if I just remove the inflation component of the interest rate? As I had talked about, inflation is one of the reason for money today being superior to money in the future. What if I remove this inflation portion? Is there still some interest remaining? How do I deal with that? And then we talk about discounting and accumulating, which is basically how do I value cash flow today at different points of time in the future, right? How do I value it at 2 years from today? How do I value it at 5 years from today? How do I value cash flow 5 years from now to 2 years from now? how do I value it today, right? So you learn to discount and accumulate, which is valuing cash flows at different points of time, right? Cash flow basically means an inflow or outflow of cash, right? So it can be for an installment, it can be you taking a loan, it can be you receiving a gift, it can be anything, right? But how do you value these cash flows is what we talk about. And then we get into annuities, which are not single cash flows but streams of payments, right? So something like the installments you pay in case you take a loan, right? So you will have maybe installments of £1,000 every month, right? So how do you value these installment structures, right? Like of regular payments which are happening, right? 1,000 every month, right? So what is its value today? It's not a single payment, it's many payments of equal amounts, right? Or of different amounts, right? So how do you value that, right? So we learn to discount and accumulate cash flows with different frequencies, with different payment structures, and using a variety of interest measures. We will talk about different interest measures when we get to chapter number 2, which is related to interest rates. Now, for this portion, paper A will take about 8 hours. Paper A practice would take another 8 hours. Paper B also take 8 hours. Reason being, there are not a lot of questions from this topic in the Excel exam. Excel usually examines more advanced topics, but still you need to go through the lectures, you need to go through the PBOR questions, which is the Part B online resource, which is the institute's material for Microsoft Excel, right? So you need to go through a bunch of topics and questions and get familiar with Excel for the first time. That's why I've given 8 hours to this topic, because you're doing Excel for the first time in an actuarial exam context, right? So that is your cash flow discounting topic unit. It would take about 25 hours, 24 to 25 hours to finish, right? Let's get into the next topic, which is project appraisal. This is all about how to evaluate financial projects using different measures, right? Like net present value, internal rate of return. You don't need to worry about these measures right now. We will get into them. But the fundamental idea is that if you are undertaking a business or any other sort of financial project in order to earn money, right? How do you evaluate that project, right? How do you say that one project is better than other? If you have 5 different business opportunities, which one do you pick, right? So that is what we talk about here. What can be different criterias for evaluating which business opportunity is better than the other? Now here, going through the topics will not take a lot of time, about 5 hours, right? But practicing questions for both paper A and paper B will take you 10 hours, even though this is just one chapter. Lot of questions have featured from this in past exams, right? So you should give a good amount of time to this topic, both from paper A and paper B point of view. You will find a lot of II questions, you will find a lot of IFoA questions, right? So give due time to this unit. It is very important, right? And it is asked almost in every attempt, either in paper A or Excel, right? So super important. Next one is valuation of loans, equity, bonds, and property. So these different kinds of assets, bonds, property, equity, and loans is what we try to sort of value. We see loans in terms of what should be the installment amount that should be paid for a given level of principal or interest, and vice versa, right? So whole bunch of combinations of principal, interest, and installments we calculate, right? What would be the principal if the installment and interest was this? If this is the installment, what is the interest component? What is the principal component? So on and so forth. All of these things we get into, right? So how do you value loans? How do you look at loans, right? Whether that's a formal loan from a bank or any other informal loan. How do you look at loans, right? That's the idea. And then we value bonds, equity, and property, these different kinds of assets. Equity basically means shares, right? Property means a real estate asset, right? Bonds are basically loans which are taken by governments or corporates, that is companies, but in form of small units, right? So these different kinds of assets we learn to value in this unit, where there are two chapters. One is on loan schedules, the other one is bonds, equity and property. Paper A again will not take a lot of time, can be done in 6 hours. It requires a lot of practice, so give 12 hours to practicing questions, especially questions related to bonds take some time. So 3 4 5 hours, 6 hours you should give to bonds itself, right? And loans will also take effort, right? Equity and property are relatively simple, are not asked a lot, right? Paper B here will take relatively lesser time, you can do it in 6 hours, right? Because again, this is something that is not asked a lot on the paper B. Loan schedules may still be asked, bonds, equity and all of that is asked lesser, right, as compared to project appraisal. So I've just given 6 hours. Of course, you feel free to put in more time. This is my minimum recommendation, right? Now, let's get into the next topic, which is related to term structure of interest rates. Now, term structure of interest rates is all about modeling how interest rate varies over time. So far, we were assuming that interest rate is same. Now we will make it vary over time. So if it varies, how do you model it, right? That's the idea. And we also talk about quantifying and mitigating interest rate risk, right? So if interest rate varies, how does it affect my business? What is the risk that I face as an insurance company, because actuaries work a lot in insurance company, as a financial institution, because actuaries work in financial institutions, right? So how do you manage this risk? This is a very actuarial topic, right? In the sense that it's about risk management, right? It sets up the foundation of credit risk theory, right? At some level, right? So this is a very, very important topic, and you should give due time to it. It's also slightly challenging, slightly tricky. People get confused with this. So here the confusing topics would be related to one, bonds, where you have slight complications with respect to taxes, and this is a slightly complicated topic related to term structure of interest rate, right? Those are the two complicated topics we have gone into so far. Other topics were much simpler, right? Now, in terms of paper A, it will take about 3 hours. Give question practice good time, so give 5 hours. Do paper B in 4 hours, right? So overall, I think in about 12 hours, you can finish up term structure of interest rates. Okay. Now, this was the financial mathematics portion so far. Okay, it is a relatively smaller portion of the syllabus, about 40 to 45%. Now we are going to get into 55 to 60% of the syllabus, which is related to life insurance mathematics. Okay, so the first unit here is related to introduction to life insurance mathematics. We talk about probabilities of life and death, right, through a chapter which is called as life tables. And then we talk about various contracts under life insurance and how do you calculate their value and risk measures, right? So we talk about different kinds of assurance and annuity contracts here, right? Which is what the chapters are, and how do you value them, right? How do you get their value? How do you get the risk associated with them? So on and so forth, right? You should give a good amount of time to this, right? Spend, at least 10 hours going through these. About 5 chapters are there, right? So it will take you a good amount of time to go through them, about 10 hours. You will take at least 12 hours to practice questions here, and you should give 6 hours to paper B, right? Like, a lot of material in paper B is not available here. A lot of past questions won't be there, but then just understanding these, just working with these and all of so on and so forth will take some amount of time, right? So you can rejig the time a bit. Maybe practice will take even more time, right? So you can reduce some time on the paper B side and put it to practice. You can reduce some time on the paper A side, again put it to practice, right? Maybe you can do this in 8 hours and then give 14-15 hours here, right? So you can do a bit of rejigging. I've added some suggested time here, right? Okay, great. Let's move on to the next unit, which is related to pricing and reserving of life insurance contracts. Here we talk about two things, two ideas, which is gross premiums and gross premium reserves, which is basically about how to calculate the premiums and reserves of life insurance contracts, right? So paper A will take some time, about 6 hours. There are a lot of questions from this unit in the past exam, and it takes a good effort to understand as well. Give 15 hours to practicing this, right? And then give 10 hours to paper B, because this is asked a lot in paper B as well, right? So this unit you should really focus on, and give about 30 hours to do it really well, right? The next unit is something students find slightly challenging, which is related to pricing and reserving for contracts with two lives, right? So there are two chapters here. One is related to joint life and last survivor contracts, and one is related to contingent and reversionary benefits, right? We talk about two things in particular, which is how to calculate premiums and reserves, but now not for life with one like contracts with one life, but two or more lives. How do you work with two lives, right? So these can be contracts where one person dies but the other one is alive, so they receive a certain sum of money, right? Or if both die, then they receive, right? One receives from the death of the other, right? So contracts like that can be created, and there things get complicated. So about 7 hours to understanding, about 12 hours for practice, right? And paper B will also take 5 to 6 hours here, right? So that is your joint life unit, right? Now moving on, uh, we have the last bunch of topics. One is related to mortality profit. Again, this is where students get slightly confused. Practice here will take a good amount of time. Practice a good number of questions from the revision notes. Okay. Modeling risks other than mortality. Here we talk about risks of falling sick, risks of people, retiring, surrendering, right? Can we make contracts based on these, right? What if someone just surrenders the policy before they die, right? How do I deal with that in a life insurance contract? Surrender basically means they don't want the policy anymore. They're like, I give up this policy, I want my premium back, or I want some amount of money for this, right? I don't want your benefit, I don't want any money when I die, right? So something like that, right? So how do you deal with these kind of risks? How do you deal with health insurance contracts? That's briefly discussed here, right? So that idea is covered in this chapter called as competing risks. Again, students find this challenging. Practicing questions will take some effort, right? Especially in paper A, right? And finally, the most important unit of the syllabus, which is related to evaluation of profit and cash flows based pricing. This is asked a lot in exams, both on paper A and paper B, right? That's why I've given a good amount of time. Understanding the topic itself will not take a lot of effort, but practicing questions will. And you'll only really understand this topic once you go through the questions, right? And this is one of those units again that students initially get really confused on. So it takes some practice to get hang of this, for the reason that it is the methodology that is used here is just the opposite, or it's slightly a deviation from what is used in earlier chapters, and students are not able to reconcile the two, and that's why they get confused, right? They are actually pretty consistent, and that you will only understand once you do the Excel portion of it, to just be able to visualize what is happening. Again, this is something I teach in a lot of detail. Okay, so this is what we have in terms of the last unit, which is relating to profit testing. Now that's all for the entire syllabus. As I told you, it will take you about 200 to 250 hours. If you have to give 300 hours, that is also fine, right? But put in your best foot forward for this paper, right? So some students even take 300 hours and do a lot more practice in terms of paper B, in terms of the practice questions. But I've recommended what is the minimum ideal kind of a thing, right? Can you do it in even lesser time? Yes, you can, but it is possible for smarter candidates, right, whose mathematical foundations are stronger, and uh, just generally depends like how safe do you want to be from the passing margin, right? So you pass at 50-60%, but if you want to really be safe, you should be aiming for at least like an attempt of 90-95 and then scoring 80 ish. So even if things go wrong in one of the papers, it comes out to be very difficult, you are fully prepared, right? So this is a 80 mark preparation that I'm talking about, right? Or an 85 mark preparation, and then you can just sort of deviate from that. Okay, great. Let's talk about the exam strategy for IFoA exams, right? Now, IFoA's exams are home based, right? They're invigilated now. The paper A is Microsoft Word based and paper B is Microsoft Excel based, right? Uh, how do you go about it? How do you prepare? First thing, you watch my lectures, which are very, very detailed and they're structured exactly like the combined material pack. Then second thing you do is you skim through the combined material pack. The third thing you do is you solve the combined material pack questions which are given at the back of the chapter. Every chapter has questions at the back of it, right? So you solve them, right? The fourth thing you do is you go to the fact sheets which are given in the revision notes to revise each of the unit, right? You do this for every revision note booklet. You watch lectures, skim through the CMP quickly because I've covered it as is already. You won't take a lot of time. You solve the practice questions and you use the fact sheets to revise. Then you go to the revision notes. Okay, revision notes are basically collections of past 20 attempt of exam questions with solutions. Okay, so you solve these revision notes. 50% of the revision notes you solve on paper and 50% you solve on Microsoft Word. The exam for IFoA is on Microsoft Word. You will have to type these things on Microsoft Word, and that is slightly challenging. It takes some time to get used to, especially if this is your first exam, right? And with CM1, it takes some effort. So I have solved some questions on Microsoft Word in my videos. You will also notice that the past solutions of IFoA for the last 4, 5, 6 attempts, uh, since COVID, all of the attempts, right, have been, in a way that they are typed out on Microsoft Word. So you can use those solutions as indicative. You can either use equation editor to type the equations, or you can just, use the normal sort of alphabet. For example, if you want to write alpha, you can very easily write ALPHA instead of inserting the Greek alpha through equation editor. That is completely acceptable, right? So for this, you should refer to past exam solutions of IFoA. They exactly show you how to type out more recent solutions, right? The revision notes I have provided you are slightly older, but the questions fully stay relevant. Okay. After this point, for every unit, what you do is you watch the Microsoft Excel lectures, right? You should take Microsoft Excel along in your preparation and not do it after you complete paper A, right? So you should like do both in parallel, so you do, so that your prep for both the portions is good, right? And then you solve Microsoft Excel PBOR questions. I've solved almost all of them in my video lectures, right? So that will just help you. But you should attempt them on your own, and then if you're getting stuck, you should watch my lectures, right? At least for the later chapters, that should be your approach, or the later questions in the chapter, that should be your approach. Then you move to the next unit and you repeat this for all units. Now, what do I mean by a unit? By a unit, I mean each revision note booklet. Okay, a booklet consists of 3 to 4 chapters. Typically, it will be in the way that I had described the units in the previous section. Doesn't have to be exactly the same, but yeah, you should, for the purpose of this exam strategy, you should consider one revision notes booklet as one unit, right? And your entire preparation should be structured around revision notes, and this entire drill, that point number 1 to 7, all of these 7 pointers that I've written here, you should do for every revision note booklet, and then move to the next one, and then move to the next one, so on and so forth. Okay. I've talked about what the revision notes are, where they are located in my course, in the other details of the material video. Okay. Now, this is for the preparation. This is for the first, sort of stab at the curriculum, right? First time when you're approaching the curriculum, right? So you go through it this way, and then you start your revision once you have completed this, right? Leave out at least 30% of the time for revision. Okay. This should take you about, this entire drill should take you about 150 to 170 hours. Okay. And then like rest of the time you should actually use for revision. Okay. If you're aiming for a 250-hour prep, if you're aiming for a 200-hour prep, you should be able to do this in these 7 pointers in 150 hours or lesser. Okay. Then what would be the revision strategy? Then you have to go through the revision notes again. You have to read the fact sheets. Fact sheets are really good summaries of every chapter. So read these fact sheets. They provide you all the formulae, all the techniques that are required for the exam for a given chapter. So you read through the fact sheet, you have revised the chapter, you revisit the revision notes, going through the questions where you got stuck the first time, right? What were the things you found tricky? You go through those questions again. Okay, you don't need to solve the entire booklet a second time. Then you solve the Y assignments, which is the Excel revision material. Y assignments are provided within the PBOR, which I have shared with you. Okay, so you do these three things to sort of revise your material, right? After this point, what you do is you solve at least 6 IFoA papers under exam conditions on Microsoft Word, and you solve the MS Excel corresponding to them. Okay, solving 6 papers would at least take you 30 hours, right? Because each paper, paper A is 3 hours and 15 minutes, right? And paper B is 1 hour and 45 minutes, right? So if you add that up, that is 5 hours. For 6 papers, that will take you 30 hours, right? So 30 hours you will have to give to solving papers under exam conditions. Apportion this, okay? And then these are the latest 6 papers. So let's say you are right now in 2025 or 2026, you should solve papers, last 6 papers, whichever have come, that would be from 2022 or 2023, right? So all of those papers you should solve. And the papers before that, 6 more papers until 2019, you should just skim through them, look at all the questions, try to, ensure that you're able to solve everything, right? And for these papers, again, you solve the Excel portion on Microsoft Excel. Excel, we don't have enough questions, so you should practice everything on Microsoft Excel. Try to do it yourself, okay? This thing will take you another 10 to 15, 20 hours, right? So this entire paper solving thing will take you about 50 hours. Keep 50 hours for it. Finally, if you still want to do more in terms of your prep, you should solve the X assignments. These are again question banks given at the back of the CMP. Okay, these have slightly higher order questions. Okay, they'll take you another 20-25 hours, right? So this is your entire prep strategy for IFoA exam. Now let's get to II. Okay, before that, if you're self-studying, instead of enrolling for my lectures, then I would say instead of these two things, going through the lectures and skimming through the CMP, you need to go through the CMP properly at least twice, because it is complicated to understand. Okay, if you have that kind of time, you should try and self-study, otherwise don't. Okay, going through the CMP twice will take a lot of time. It will take you at least 100 hours. Okay, if you go through it properly twice, or maybe like, I don't know, 75-80 hours, right? Lectures you can watch on 1.5x and finish in like 40, 45, 50 hours as well, right? So I made things really easy to understand. Okay, now let's move on to II exam prep strategy. The strategy is exactly the same. Let's talk just with a few changes. So I'll just talk about the changes. So if you're prepping for IA, you're prepping effectively for an MCQ exam. Okay. And with MS Excel getting even a higher focus because you need individually 30 marks in both paper A and B. Lot of times what happens is people score the overall 50%, okay, but they are not able to get 30% individually in paper A and B, right? So to pass, you need both the criteria to be satisfied, 50% overall and 30% in paper A and paper B. How will your pass mark be calculated? Very similar to IFoA. They will take whatever is your mark in paper A, multiply by 70%, take your mark in paper B, multiply by 30%, get your overall mark. Should be great, higher than 50, right? And then your individual marks in paper A and paper B should be higher than 30%. The time that you get to write the exams is again the same for IA and IFoA. It's 3 hours 15 minutes for paper A and 1 hour 45 minutes for paper B. Now, in terms of your strategy, what differs is that you follow the exactly same strategy, except instead of solving IFoA past papers, you need to solve II past papers, the MCQ papers under exam conditions. Okay. So the last couple of attempts, whatever have been the MCQ papers, you should solve them under exam conditions. And older papers since 2019, after 2019, whatever papers have occurred, you should solve those papers as well, but your focus should be to get the final answer correct, right? Your focus should not be on methodology, because again, it's an MCQ exam now, right? We don't have enough papers for II, but again, it just will help you as long as you are able to get the final answer, and II past papers will help you improve your first principle understanding of the subject as well, right? Now, in terms of Excel, you should solve all the papers since 2019, right? And ensure that you're able to do them. So you'll get a good amount of practice. The only difference between the two is that in case of IFoA, you solve IFoA past papers. In case of II, you solve II past papers. Revision notes, which are IFoA revision notes, you should solve in both cases, because it just helps you build your foundation well, right, in terms of your subject understanding. Now, obviously here you don't need to type out on Microsoft Word, right? So you can just solve revision notes. Again, your focus should be getting the final answer correct, okay, when you're solving the revision notes. Solve X assignments. Again, your focus should be to get the final answer correct. Practice as much as you can for IA, but it will take lesser time in terms of the typing, more time in terms of understanding the concepts and solving more difficult questions. So somehow it balances out now. For II and IFoA, time for prep is similar, right? Okay, now let's move on to the common mistakes that students make. CM1 is a very interesting subject. Every formula is very intuitive. Don't cram formulae. You should just try to understand every concept. The examiner can always tweak the concept slightly, tweak the question slightly, and unless you understand it, you won't be able to do it. So don't cram formulae. Most of the formulae that you need are very intuitive. A lot of the formula and values are actually given in the actuarial tables, so you can use them directly. So you don't need to learn anything. You're allowed to carry the actuarial tables in the exam. The other two mistakes that people make are ignoring MS Word typing practice and ignoring MS Excel portion. Don't ignore these. They're very important. This is not pre-2019. This is not pre-COVID era. You have a from home exam which is based on a computer. Your entire practice should be on the computer. Okay? Both for paper A and paper B. Give both of them due time, typing as well as Excel. Okay? So if you avoid these mistakes, you will actually pass very easily. It's not a difficult exam to pass. Okay. What exams can you take along with CM1? So it depends on your situation that you're currently in. If you are preparing for actuarial exams full time and you love challenges, okay, then along with CM1, you can take CS1. CM1, CS1 are the foundational papers, the first papers. It's difficult to do them together, but if you have about 5 months, 6 months to prepare and you're preparing for exams full time, you can easily do CM1 and CS1 together. Okay. If you have already passed CS1, then do CM1 and CM2 together. Okay, you can do that. CM2 is a smaller exam as compared to CS2. That's why I'm not recommending CS2. If you are in college right now, okay, or you're in your undergraduate degree, postgraduate degree, whatever, right, then you should just take one exam. But if you are very keen on taking two exams, either take CP2, which is the Excel modeling paper, so it really complements well with the CM1, or take CB1, CB2, or if you want a really light exam, the CP3 communications exam is something you can take. So you can take any of these papers. And if you are in a full-time job and you feel that, I need another exam, you feel too enthusiastic, I would say take either CP2 or CP3. And then, like, if you have more bandwidth, then take CB1 or CB2. But usually I would recommend writing CM1 alone. It's a huge paper. Okay. So unless you're very keen, don't take a second exam. But if you take a second exam, you can use this as guidance. Okay. Now let me talk about my course for CM1. First question, do you even need coaching? You don't. Not necessarily. I have prepared for my CM1 and CS1 and all of my exams. They used to be CT1, CT5, CT3 earlier. On my own, reading through the material, it takes a lot more effort. And I think the level of understanding I have of these subjects now, I did not have in the first two readings, right? So it's very difficult to fully grasp the material. You can grasp it to the level that is good enough for passing, okay? But with self study, it is difficult to like wholly understanding the material. And if you are going to work in the life insurance industry, you are going to use this material and apply this material. So unless you have a lot of time and unless you're okay with compromising a bit on the understanding, I would not recommend self study, especially for CM1. But you can go for it if that is how you that's what you're most comfortable with. By all means, go for it. Don't go for bad coaching for this paper. Lot of coaching institutes teach this badly. Don't get into the detail of the material. Don't go for them. So what is the role of a tutor? What is the role of a coaching institute or a tutor? First one is to help make you fall in love with the subject, which is just getting you excited about it, presenting the material in such a way that you can actually understand it easily and enjoy it. And the second role is to help you cover the syllabus faster, right? So it will take you sort of more time to do self study. And finally, it is to help you see the latent patterns in the curriculum and understand industry applications, right? There are a lot of hidden patterns, lot of things, a lot of concepts that you don't fully understand unless someone tells you them, or you like go through the material 4, 5, 6 times and then you understand them, right? I am sure no one is going through the material 4, 5 times unless they are teaching it, right? So that is where I've been teaching this subject for over 7 years now. So I cover a lot of these things which are pretty intuitive and are often missed by the students. The exams are not difficult, but the material is very dense and difficult to understand, right? Exams are easier to pass because similar questions repeat. Okay. I'll also help you understand the industry application and talk about those things, right? So you should not go to traditional coaching where you're made to cram formulae. That is very problematic, right? Go to only tutors who sort of get into the intuitive logic behind the formula. And you can gauge that by speaking to the tutor. How much if they will be teaching you concepts in a lot of detail, these people will be very passionate about the subject. So don't go to a tutor where you don't sense a passion about the subject from them. That's the easy way to judge. Okay. My course, I'll get into a lot of detail, but just want to mention one particular thing, that all my lectures are in English. Okay, so for students who are based outside India, for student based in south of India, this is really an advantage. For students based in north of India, this might be, I can't understand math in English, or I can't study in English, and that is completely fine. You can uh, choose to not enroll, of course, because it's in English. But then I try to simplify the material a lot. So you should go through the demo lectures and see how simple the explanation is, right? Even though it's in English, which may not be your first language, right? Now let's talk about how do you enroll and what is included in my course. So firstly, I give you video lectures which cover all the topics in detail with derivation and intuition. I conduct regular doubt solving sessions. These are mostly on demand. So whenever students ask for doubts, I conduct these sections, and I ensure that I conduct one or two before the exam as well. Then you will be added to a WhatsApp community of students taking the exam, where you can discuss your doubts, ask all of your uh, questions, make study groups, connect with other students, so that you don't have to tread the journey alone. I will be solving a lot of past questions in the videos that I will share with you. And if you have any particular doubt, you can send it to me. I will solve that question on video as well. Okay. I have added some typing tutorial for IFoA exam, how to type the exam in Microsoft Word, right? And for IIMCQ questions, again, I've solved some in my course from the past few attempts to just help you how to get like how to solve MCQ questions. If you send me more doubts, I will add them as well. Okay. How do you enroll? You go to my website, theactuarialguy.com. Indian students will see the pricing in rupees. Foreign students will see the pricing in dollars, right? People who are based outside India. And if you have any doubts, questions about the course, about CM1, about actuarial science, need any guidance, you can always reach out to me at this number. You can just WhatsApp. Don't call directly. Try to just text. I'll reach back. Right. So that's all for this video. Thank you.